Please mute everybody.
For the cavern of night, darkness alive with possibility. Nose to this wind full of twinkling lights, trying to catch the scent of what's coming to be in this world of wonders. World of wonders. World of wonders. World of wonders. Somewhere a saxophone slides through changes like a wet pipe dripping down my neck. Gives me a chill. Sounds like danger, but I can't stop moving till I cross this sector of this world of wonders. World of wonders. World of wonders. World of wonders. There's a rainbow shining in a bead of spittle, falling diamonds in rattling rain. Light flexed on moving muscle. I stand here dazzled with my heart in flames at this world of wonders. World of wonders. World of wonders. World of wonders. Moment of peace like brief Arctic bloom, red gold ripple of the sun going down. Line of black hills makes my bed, sky full of love pulled over my head in this world of wonders. 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 World of wonders.
Aren't we lucky to have so much wonderful music here? I think it's another concert. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Joan Ward, and I'm here today as a service associate. Reverend Tim Boeve will be presenting our message this afternoon. Did I say it right?
Close enough.
Close enough. Okay. We are here in this place to share an experience of community, of sacred time, and inspiration. We each come with our own experience of life. We may be feeling challenged by difficulties of one kind or another. We may be in a reflective mood. We may feel uncertain about how life is unfolding for us. Or we may be feeling a sense of gratitude and fulfillment. When we come here to this sacred space with the intention to be fully present during this time and allow everything to be as it is, the words that are spoken, the songs that are sung, the feelings of joy or sorrow that are shared, we may find that our own needs are met in unexpected, even in revelatory ways. May it be that in opening ourselves to each other and to what is presented here today, that we find both meaning and enrichment for our lives. Something that we can take into this week, causing us to live more fully and freely in the face of whatever we encounter. And with these inviting sentiments, I want to welcome you to our LCUUF Sunday service. Welcome. Okay, our announcements were on a slideshow before the service and were also sent out in our weekly newsletter. If you are new and would like to receive that newsletter or other emails, please talk to a member of the welcome team or write to us at info@lcuuf.org. And now, a special welcome to our visitors. If you are visiting with us for the first time or have returned or reconnected with us after a long absence, we invite you to say your name and tell us where you're from. If you are on Zoom, please introduce yourself in the chat box, and it will be read aloud in the fellowship. We're going to start with the people in the room, and he has the mic. Are there visitors?
Hi, my name's Gray Weissend. I'm from Richmond, Virginia.
Welcome.
Welcome, Greg.
Move this further away from your mouth. That's why you, yeah. If you can, yeah.
Anybody else?
Good morning. Eladio and Judy from Florida, and we are UUers in Florida.
Welcome. Welcome.
Welcome. Okay, do we have any visitors on Zoom this morning?
I don't see any, so I guess not.
You're going to have to recruit. Welcome to all our visitors and newcomers, both in person and on Zoom, when they come. Here at LCUUF, we offer a wide variety of services on various topics presented by our members, outside guests, as well as our minister, Reverend Matt Alspaugh. We hope you will return to sample this variety of thought and belief. Our chalice lighting words today are from a brief poem which I will read twice. The poem was written 1,000 years ago by a Japanese woman named Izuma Shikibu Hirschfield in her book, The Ink Dark Moon. Although the wind blows terribly here, the moonlight also leaks between the roof planks of this ruined house. If you try to wall yourself off from the unwanted, you will wall yourself off from the wanted. Although the wind blows terribly here, The moonlight also leaks between the roof planks of this ruined house. If you try to wall yourself off from the unwanted, you will wall yourself off from the wanted. Now, having lit our chalice, let us sing these words together. Rekindle this light in celebration for the life that we share. Each week, we take time to remind ourselves that we belong to a community which cares for us. The sharing of joys, sorrows, and milestones is one way that we practice holding each other in community. We speak briefly what is in our hearts, sharing any significant joys or sorrows in our lives because there is power in the sharing. We will start with the people in the room to give those on Zoom a chance to type the joys or sorrows in the chat box. They will be read out loud by Kate. First, let's voice our sorrows. Whatever you or the world may be holding that is in need of our healing and caring thoughts. Are there any sorrows that people would like to share here in the room? I'm still on this. Muted me. There. I would just like to say of concern for our member, Lois Cugini, who has had a really rough year with health and has been in the hospital in Guadalajara this week, and hopefully will be getting to come home this weekend.
This week I've watched more political TV than I should have. And I watched some of the interviews with the followers of Trump. And it broke my heart that they are so lost and that we've cut them off. And so I feel like we're all responsible for what's happening in the United States. There's brothers and sisters out there with no recourse except Trump.
Are there any sorrows that we shared on Zoom this morning?
No, we have no sorrows showing on Zoom today.
Not being shared out loud. Okay. Let us share our joys. Whatever you may be celebrating, whatever evokes a feeling of joy or peace for yourself or others. Are there any joys that people would like to share here in the room?
I'm happy that there seems to be a growing feeling of joy in the United States. And
Overdue.
Hi, I'm Flo, and I have joy, and I have some bittersweet stuff. But yes, that feeling of joy in the United States is, I feel captured by. But you know what else happens? I walk through that gate every Sunday, and I am uplifted. I am uplifted by the fact that not only is my UU fellowship here, but that I come early so that I can mingle with the St. Andrew's Fellowship. And I feel such joy in that different people, we can still love each other, you know, and that's what I think this world needs more of, loving each other. And there will always be things that are out of my control, out of my hula hoop. And, you know, and that's the way it is, and how I'm able to move through that will determine my journey, and I'm just so glad to be here.
Thank you, Flo. Beautifully said.
Paula and I have been enjoying a big family get-together. Yesterday, Jean Haley, who some older members of the congregation may remember, she's in a nursing home, but she just turned 88. So the whole family came down from all over the U.S., and we had a really nice get-together. The only remaining person here is Gray, Jean's grandson.
Thanks, Paul.
Hi, I'm Priscilla. Joy, because we just returned from 10 days with our now 5.5-month-old grandson in the San Diego area. I feel joy that we have the mobility, the health, and the finances to be able to do such things. I'm really grateful for that. And a joy sorrow. We received an announcement that a dear friend that we'd had for 30 plus years recently died. The joy part is he made it to 94 in relatively good health until the end, and that once again we have the ability to turn around and go right back up to be there for his celebration of life.
Half an hour ago on the phone with my 32-year-old son in Santa Fe, I learned that his wife, Mary, is pregnant. And that was after 10 years of tongue biting on the subject of when they were going to have kids.
You go ahead.
Bueno, I am celebrating too. It happened that I was in the United States when Kamala Harris was nominated, and I couldn't believe all my friends, how everything turned around. It's great excitement. I'm very happy because I see that women are uniting from every color, Black women, Latino women, Caribbean women, Asian women, and men. So it has been really wonderful to see the turning there and the excitement and the happiness. And so we have a Black woman, an immigrant descendant, and I think that I'm a great vice president. So I'm very happy for that.
Yeah, I'm happy to have Norris back home. I was sort of languishing, I did something to my wrist and was in a bit of a funk for several days, and I feel much better. So.
Are there any joys that were shared on Zoom? Oops, we have one more here. I'll be back to you, Kate. I love all these.
Hey, I'm about to embarrass my husband. Last week we celebrated 54 years together.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Okay. Kate, let's try. Are there any joys?
Yes, we have several joys today.
Good.
From Colleen Beery. Having my good friend of 40 years, Cindy, here with me for a week, I am blessed with the generosity of friends and family. From Devorah, 5 days of radiation this week and then done. Just booked my flight and will be home on the 27th. Finally, looking forward to seeing everyone. From Eric and Catherine Luria, we are having a great time in Portland with our family. And I have a joy. I visited yesterday with Lynn and Gary Cleek. Both of them are much better than they were a month or two ago, beginning to look semi-normal again.
That's a relative thing with the Cleeks. We love them. And this candle Michael has from our care team represents the joys and sorrows we hold in the silent sanctuary of our hearts. We light this candle for all those unspoken sorrows and joys. Thank you, Michael. Let's share a moment of silence to hold in our hearts both the sorrows and the joys that have been shared this morning. Thank you. There are many ways to be of service to LCUUF. Our time, treasure, and talents are all necessary components to a healthy fellowship. Now is the time in our service when we ask you to share the gift of treasure through pledging and donations. As we pass the baskets, if you are new here today or are struggling to hold things together, let the basket pass you by. Your presence is more than enough, and it's a gift to us. Each week, we give half of the money collected at the service to an organization providing services to our lakeside community. For the month of August, we are supporting Asociación Pro Mexico with their Second Chances program, housed in San Juan Cosala. Each year, women from 11 villages throughout the Lake Chapala region are enrolled in a 7 to 10-month course, free of charge, which provides education, career training, as well as mentoring. 30 to 40 women graduate each term and go on to support their families, selves, and the community in a variety of ways. If you are not attending the fellowship in person, please donate to share the basket. Please note, donate to share the basket when you pay your pledge. Donate, share the basket separately, or indicate what part of your donation is for share the basket. Okay, the offering has now been generously given and gratefully received. Our opening hymn is 168, One More Step. Please rise in body or in spirit and join us in singing. Today's reading is from organizational psychologist and author Adam Grant and his book, Think Again. With advances in access to information and technology, knowledge isn't just increasing, it's increasing at an increasing rate. In 2011, you consumed about 5 times as much information per day as you would have just a quarter century earlier. As of 1950, it took about 50 years for knowledge in medicine to double. By 1980, medical knowledge was doubling every 7 years. And by 2010, it was doubling in half that time. The accelerating pace of change means that we need to question our beliefs more readily than ever before. This is not an easy task. As we sit with our beliefs, they tend to become more extreme and more entrenched. In education, after revolutions in history and revelations in science, it often takes years for a curriculum to be updated and textbooks to be revised. We are swift to recognize when other people need to think again. We question the judgment of experts when we seek out a second opinion on a medical diagnosis. Unfortunately, when it comes to our own knowledge and opinions, we often favor feeling right over being right. In everyday life, we make many diagnoses of our own, ranging from whom we hire to whom we marry. We need to develop the habit of forming our own second opinions.
Buenas tardes, mis amigos y amigas. I begin my remarks today by sharing some items from a list of 12 commandments for seniors. Now, these probably have all made the rounds at various times, but I don't recall having heard them, or more likely, I forgot that I did. Anyway, here are a few of these commandments. Talk to yourself. There are times when you need expert advice. You don't need anger management. You need people to stop pissing you off. The biggest lie you tell yourself is, I don't need to write that down. I'll remember it. This one especially applies to me. One more for the road means peeing before you leave the house. Growing old should have taken longer. And my favorite, you still haven't learned to act your age and hope you never will. These commandments, more aptly, statements, are a way of humorously reframing, or more to this morning's theme, rethinking the business of aging. Now, rethinking applies to many areas of life, however, and in the next several minutes, I want to explore some of these with you. I want to begin by citing one of the chapter titles from the book by Adam Grant that Joan quoted from moments ago. The chapter that immediately caught my attention when I was browsing through the table of contents, deciding whether or not to purchase a copy, and obviously decided to. That chapter is a preacher, a prosecutor, a politician, and a scientist walk into your mind. It sounds like the beginning of a joke, doesn't it? Now, being a so-called preacher, you can probably guess what about this chapter title caught my attention, besides with what's happening in the world of politics and having a former prosecutor as one of the presidential contenders in the upcoming U.S. elections. It seems even more relevant. Now, before I delve into the ideas set forth in this chapter, let me say a bit about this book and its author, both of which are new to me and perhaps for you as well. The author is Adam Grant. A brief bio taken from his website reveals that he has been Wharton Business School's top-rated professor for 7 straight years. As an organizational psychologist, he is a leading expert on how we can find motivation and live more, or rethink assumptions and live more generous and creative lives. He's been recognized as the world's #2 most influential management thinker. I don't know who #1 is. Anybody have a guess on that? And he is one of Fortune magazine's 40 under 40. He has written 6 best-selling books that have been translated into 45 languages. So maybe somebody worth listening to. And to better introduce him and the theme of what this message is about today, here's a short video clip, just under 5 minutes, of a TED Talk that he gave presumably during COVID lockdown, as we see him speaking not in front of an audience, but looks like from his home.
You might have heard that if you drop a frog in a pot of boiling water, it'll jump out right away. But if you put it in lukewarm water and then slowly heat it up, the frog won't survive. The frog's big problem is that it lacks the ability to rethink the situation. It doesn't realize that the warm bath is becoming a death trap until it's too late. Humans might be smarter than frogs, but our world is full of slow boiling pots. Think about how slow people were to react to warnings about a pandemic, climate change, or a democracy in peril. We fail to recognize the danger because we're reluctant to rethink the situation. We struggle with rethinking in all kinds of situations. We expect our squeaky brakes to keep working until they finally fail on the freeway. We believe the stock market will keep going up, even after we hear about a real estate bubble. And we keep watching Game of Thrones, even after the show jumps the shark. Rethinking isn't a hurdle in every part of our lives. We're happy to refresh our wardrobes and renovate our kitchens. But when it comes to our goals, identities, and habits, we tend to stick to our guns. And in a rapidly changing world, that's a huge problem. I'm an organizational psychologist. It's my job to rethink how we work, lead, and live. But that hasn't stopped me from getting stuck in slow boiling pots. So I started studying why. I learned that intelligence doesn't help us escape. Sometimes it traps us longer. Being good at thinking can make you worse at rethinking. There's evidence that the smarter you are, the more likely you are to fall victim to the "I'm not biased" bias. You can always find reasons to convince yourself you're on the right path, which is exactly what my friends and I did on a trip to Panama. I worked my way through college, and by my junior year, I'd finally saved enough money to travel. It was my first time leaving North America. I was excited for my first time climbing a mountain. Actually an active volcano, literally a slow boiling pot. I set a goal to reach the summit and look into the crater. So we're in Panama. We get off to a late start, but it's only supposed to take about 2 hours to get to the top. After 4 hours, we still haven't reached the top. It's a little strange that it's taking so long, but we don't stop to rethink whether we should turn around. We've already come so far. We have to make it to the top. Do not stand between me and my goal. We don't realize we've read the wrong map. We're on Panama's highest mountain. It actually takes 6 to 8 hours to hike to the top. By the time we finally reach the summit, the sun is setting. We're stranded with no food, no water, no cell phones, and no energy for the hike down. There's a name for this kind of mistake. It's called escalation of commitment to a losing course of action. It happens when you make an initial investment of time or money, and then you find out it might have been a bad choice. But instead of rethinking it, you double down and invest more. You want to prove to yourself and everyone else that you made a good decision. Escalation of commitment explains so many familiar examples of businesses plummeting. Blockbuster, BlackBerry, Kodak, leaders just kept simmering in their slow boiling pots, failing to rethink their strategies. Escalation of commitment explains why you might have stuck around too long in a miserable job, why you've probably waited for a table way too long at a restaurant, and why you might have hung on to a bad relationship long after your friends encouraged you to leave. It's hard to admit that we were wrong and that we might have even wasted years of our lives. So we tell ourselves, if I just try harder, I can turn this around.
Among other things that Grant says in this brief clip is that although we all have the ability to rethink things like renovating a kitchen to make it more modern or functional, we tend not to do this when it comes to our goals, our identities, and our habits. I want to come back to this point a bit later, but as I mentioned above, his chapter in the book about the preacher, politician, prosecutor, and scientist walking into your mind provides Grant's view of how we typically think about things and what he sees as a better choice. See if what Grant writes resonates with you. He says that as we think and talk, we often slip into the mindsets of 3 different professions: preachers, prosecutors, and politicians. In each of these modes, Grant writes, we take on a particular identity and use a distinct set of tools. We go into preacher mode when our sacred beliefs are in jeopardy, and consequently, we deliver sermons to promote our ideas. We enter prosecutor mode when we recognize flaws in other people's thinkings and reasoning, and then marshal arguments to prove them wrong and win our case. Now we shift into politician mode when we're seeking to win over an audience, campaigning and lobbying for the approval of our constituents. Grant says we risk becoming so wrapped up in preaching that we're right, prosecuting others who are wrong, and politicking for support that we don't even bother to rethink our own views. Now, each of these modes of thinking and talking are on full display if you're following the political news from up north, with apologies to you Canadians and other non-US citizens here. And actually, I don't have to look very far from my own way of thinking and talking at times. I've employed each of these ways of trying to persuade others more frequently than I care to admit, only to realize later that I couldn't verify for sure that I was even right. Now, you may be asking, well, what about the scientific mode of thinking and talking? Grant writes that if you're a scientist by trade, rethinking is fundamental to your profession. You're paid to be constantly aware of the limits of your understanding. You're expected to doubt what you know, be curious about what you don't know, and update your views based on new data. He mentions that some scientists actually enjoy being wrong. Fancy that. Of course, the scientific mode of thinking is the one that Grant favors, because as a highly sought-after organizational psychologist, he is all about best practices in the workplace and within organizations. He is data-driven. He's kind of a wonk at that, but he has a knack for presenting his cases in a very compelling fashion. I'm quite sure that all of you, being good Unitarian Universalists, agree with this way of processing information. That is the scientific mode. Whether or not you enjoy being proven wrong with some opinions that you hold. As Joan read earlier, we can recognize when other people need to rethink or think again. We know how to question the judgment of experts as we seek second opinions on medical diagnoses or on a building project. The real challenge comes as to how we hold our own knowledge and opinions. It is wise for us to realize that we often favor feeling right over being right. We need to develop the habit of forming our own second opinions to the ones we already hold. A phrase that describes this way of being, which I had not heard expressed before encountering it in his writing, is the phrase confident humility. You don't usually see those two words together. This is something we can learn. Confident humility. It essentially means being willing to move forward with confidence in our capacity to learn, while being willing to admit what we don't know, hence the power of not knowing. Living with confident humility helps us to keep an open mind. Being open-minded is, I think, one of the keys to having a happy life, and is probably something all of us strive for in our own way of responding to new ideas, situations, and so forth. I got to practice opening my mind a couple of weeks ago right here when Barley and Susie led the service on dancing. I almost opted out of coming that morning, but in the end I took my rarely used cowbell and percussion stick and entered into the experience with a fair amount of gusto, I might add. You see, I like to dance, but as you may surmise or have surmised from my previous messages here that I have given, the church I grew up didn't offer dance as one of its liturgical options. Dancing was frowned upon generally. Anyway, you kind of get used to doing church in a certain way. You know, you grow up with that. And ours was more about being quiet and sitting on our hands. We didn't clap very much, and so I'm making that adjustment here as well, because that's something you like to do. Now, let's reflect on one of the statements that Grant made in saying that though we have the capacity to change our minds, it is the hardest thing for us to do. And let me scroll backwards a little bit, Kate. I think I didn't read that very well. All right, let's start from the top. Now, let's reflect on one of the statements Grant made in saying that though we have the capacity to change our minds, it is hardest for us to do so and have second opinion when it comes to our personal goals, our identity, our habits. And if this is true, then realize that Adam Grant is under 40 years old, and he's teaching university students who are in the throes of thinking and learning new things, and he works with companies like Google and Microsoft filled with 20 and 30 and 40-year-olds. They're engaged in a fast-shifting world of information, and I can understand their need for flexibility in how they hold their ideas and opinions. Yet, does what Grant is saying have relevance for us? For our cohort of mostly retirees, what do you think? In this time of our lives, are we, as happens with many people in the so-called golden years, set in our ways to such an extent that the notion of rethinking our habits or our goals, even our identity, holds any appeal for us? I must say, on encountering this material, I didn't feel this way. That is to say, I believe the ability to live with confident humility and to keep an open-mindedness and to keep questioning my opinions and beliefs is still something I want to strive for. And I sense that's true for you too. Otherwise, why do we bother engaging with others in a fellowship like this? Why do we structure our services around a message that typically engages us to live more fully, more compassionately, more justly, and so forth? And why would the Sunday service team, to which I belong, sponsor a series of workshops suggesting other ways of creating meaningful services? Looks like we can learn something new. So to answer my own question, I believe what Grant is saying about questioning our opinions and being open to new information and welcoming other points of view is very relevant for us even as retirees. And with that conviction, I want to draw this presentation to a close with a video clip of a Texas state representative whose name is James Tallarico. Ring a bell with anybody? James Tallarico. In this video, you will see him not speaking before the Texas State House, but on a Sunday morning before a Presbyterian congregation in Austin, Texas, in a church where he grew up, where his father was the pastor. It's a 3-minute clip. And after it concludes, I will tell you why I chose to include it in this presentation.
I'm about to mix two things that we are taught not to mix: politics and religion. And it may surprise some people to hear me talking about politics in a church. In fact, some of my fellow progressives may be clutching their constitutional pearls as I speak. And so let me quickly clarify just a few things. Christianity is political. It has been from the beginning. In fact, the symbol behind me comes from a political execution of an activist by an empire. Western Christianity, since its migration from Europe, has tried its best to suck all of the politics out of the church, and with it, all of the meaning. We have forgotten our radical roots. The original gospel of spiritual and political and personal liberation has been supplanted at best by self-help drivel, and at worst by systematic oppression. In too many ways, some modern churches have become these self-perpetuating social clubs that exist only to amplify and reinforce the tribal instincts of their members, rather than robust prophetic organs of spiritual and societal change. And we wonder why young people across the globe are fleeing the church and organized religion generally. I think if we're gonna save the temple, it's up to us to overturn the tables. I grew up here in a very different church, one that I think more closely resembles the mystical and radical traditions of the early Christian movement. My worldview was shaped below the stained glass in this roof. My politics were forged in the controversies that have surrounded our church, from violating our denomination's rule against performing same-sex marriage ceremonies 2 decades ago, to housing an undocumented family today. I was taught from a very early age that Christianity was just another word for breaking rules. Some remarked during my campaign that I reference biblical teachings more than most Democratic candidates. And many politicians, progressives in particular, like to say they keep their faith and their politics separate, that one doesn't influence the other. And honestly, I have never understood that. I think your faith and your politics should inform, challenge, and reinforce each other daily. The Capitol is where I work on what the world can be. The sanctuary is where I dream of what the world could be. That's why my constituents often hear me reference the book of Matthew when discussing healthcare policy, or cite Dr. King's sermons when critiquing political polarization, or quote the group Pastors for Texas Children when talking about education issues.
A nod to Devorah, I think she's on Zoom, who was helping me from afar with creating the images and video clips that have accompanied this message. I came up with this one, but she was acting as a sounding board, and she thought I should play the entire clip. I probably should have and just sat down and shut up myself, but no, I had a specific reason for wanting to play even the little bit that I did. And just to let you know, he goes on to talk against the Christian nationalist movement, and he's got other videos about that. So here you have this young, devout-looking man just going right into the heart of it in Texas, where he's facing all this backlash, right? So well worth our getting to know. But they chose it for a very specific reason, because it illustrates just one opportunity for someone like myself to open my mind and rethink my own opinions. You see, as I have shifted my theological views over these past years, I've become quite hardened against evangelicalism and other aspects of the Christian worldview from which I was nurtured. I almost sped past the video clip that popped up of this guy in my YouTube feed when I initially saw this earnest, pious-looking young man step out in front of a cross. But the title of his talk was Trump or Jesus, so I thought I would listen to it just to see. And I'm glad that I did. Perhaps you had similar feelings when you first laid eyes on him in a chancel of a Christian church in front of a cross. Can you open yourself to others who pray differently than we do, who worship differently than we do, to those who are much younger than we are, etc., etc.? Can we rethink our opinions? In this case, I'm glad that I did. Now I have a new young hero to follow, and perhaps as I am able, support his political aspirations, because I happen to agree with him and love that he speaks not to people like us, but to his fellow evangelicals in Texas. And Kate, I'm just going to pause for a moment here. On his website, he's got other video feeds, and one of it, which is he's in the Texas State House, and there's a woman in front presenting this idea of posting the 10 Commandments, not the 12 Commandments I read earlier, but the 10 Commandments in the schools, the public schools of Texas. And he's sitting on the circular dais with his other colleagues, and he's quoting from Scripture to this woman who's very obviously ardent in her religious convictions that the 10 Commandments should be posted in public schools. And in the best argument he could possibly muster, speaking directly to her as a woman of faith and a man of faith, it was just absolutely remarkable to watch this happening on the floor of a political capital. And so I just suggest that to you. He might be well worth looking up. And if we get our energy behind him and his movement grows, how important that could be, right? James Tallarico, T-A-L-A-R-I-C-O. Okay. Well, who knows what can happen for us as we open ourselves to other points of view and rethink our ideas, our goals, our identities. By the way, do you recall the video clip of Adam Grant when he spoke about frogs staying in pots of water that heats up gradually until it's too late? Well, turns out that isn't so. Just as Grant discovered when he researched whether this common belief was true. Frogs will jump out of water just like you will when it gets too hot. Just one more example of why it's important to stay flexible and how we hold our beliefs and opinions. So may it be. Amen.
That was a hard one to let go of, because I've told that frog story to thousands of people. Flexible. Okay. Thank you. Our closing hymn is number 298, Wake Now My Senses. And according to notes from the far fringe, this hymn reminds us that all that what we are called to do is a dance with mystery. That as much gravitas as our call requires, it also requires us to enter that call with a light, loving heart. Please rise in body and spirit and join us in singing. That's great.
Wake now my senses and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being it all. Keep with the web of creation you vow. Giving, receiving, as love shows us how. Wake now my reason, reach out to the new. Join ashes of suffering fill the white sky. Take as your neighbor both stranger and friend, praying and striving their hardship to end. Wake now my conscience with justice thy guide. Join with all people whose rights are denied. Take not for granted a privileged place. God love embraces the whole human race. Wake now my vision of ministry clear. Brighten my pathway with radiance here. Mingle my calling with all who will share. Work toward a planet transformed by our care.
We live in an ever-changing, fast-paced world, a world filled with divisions of thought, belief, and practice. To be people who engage with all the input that crosses our awareness in a thoughtful, life-enhancing way, it requires that we maintain open minds and that we strive to live with confident humility. Confidence in being willing to live with doubt. Humility in the face of all that we don't know. Appreciating the limits of our understanding and staying curious about what we can yet learn. There may just be transforming power in recognizing what we don't know.
So much there. Let us extinguish our chalice with these words which we read together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we keep in our hearts and share with all the world. This concludes. Our worship is over. Our service begins. Go in peace and with a purpose.